Christmas has come early this year, at least for some. In a persistent break with tradition, it turns out that to really strike it lucky, you have to have been naughty, not nice. Very, very naughty indeed, as it happens. The most recent gift to high-ups on the naughty list is 4 more years of immunity from any sort of prosecution for those Big Pharma types who pushed out the jabs for others to push into billions of arms. Santa Claus in this instance is ho 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 Joe Biden, and my goodness, but he's been generous this year. As far as Big Pharma goes, that cheery old elf in the White House has put a big tick beside advice from his officials at Health and Human Services declaring that there's still a credible risk of the COVID pandemic spiralling out of control in the next 4 years. Deaths attributed to COVID and hospital admissions for same are at historic lows, but mention of that fact would only take the lovely bubbles out of the Big Pharma champagne, still celebrating as they surely are after making all those lovely billions of profit from making half the world's population into guinea pigs for experimental gene therapies. So the stay out of jail card from Biden will carry those naughty boys and girls at Pfizer and Moderna all the way through to 2029. Families of those already dead and those chronically injured will just have to wait until then, at least, before it'll be worth adding to their Christmas lists any hope whatever of suing those responsible for harms done. All of it was reported this week in the Mail Online under the headline, Biden gives Pfizer and Moderna shield from being sued for COVID vaccine injuries and deaths until 2029. I quote, the Public Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act was initially enacted in 2020, in part to encourage vaccine manufacturers to speed up the research of COVID vaccines without fear of being held legally responsible for things like side effects. The extension, which had last been renewed in May 2023, also protects healthcare workers and hospitals who provide the shots from being sued. End quote. Production of, involvement with, and administering of those jabs is simply the gift that keeps on giving. Those compiling the naughty list might also have paid attention to a story in a publication called The Daily Clout, headlined, Pfizer did not disclose a Kansas vaccinated sudden cardiac death. Pfizer-BioNTech did not disclose the deaths of 2 vaccinated participants in its COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials, according to a team of Daily Clout researchers who analysed documents related to the Pfizer clinical trials. The deaths occurred before the US Food and Drug Administration granted emergency use authorization for the vaccine in December 2020. However, it wasn't until September 2023, nearly 3 years later, that the FDA publicly released documents revealing the deaths of a 63-year-old Kansas woman and a 58-year-old Georgia woman who participated in the trials. The revelations prompted Dr. Jayanthi Kannadhasan, an Australian anaesthesiologist and peri-operative physician, and one of the researchers analysing the Pfizer documents on behalf of Daily Clout, to write to Kansas Attorney General Chris Kobach, requesting his office investigate the death of the 63-year-old Kansas woman. Quote, if the additional 2 deaths had been disclosed at the time of the EUA, it would have shown that the BNT162b2 mRNA COVID vaccine intervention provided no reduction in deaths, Kannadhasan wrote in her letter. In June, Kobach sued Pfizer, alleging the company misled the public by marketing its COVID-19 vaccine as safe and effective while concealing known risks, including myocarditis and pericarditis, failed pregnancies and deaths, and critical data on limited effectiveness. End quotes. Gifts from the jabs keep tumbling out as though from pooled crackers. Here's cancer doctor Professor Angus Dalgleish reporting back from a medical conference he attended in Australia.
They got all the evidence that the messenger RNA vaccines there They're all completely contaminated. They are just not fit for purpose. The Pfizers are all full of SV40. SV40 was what, in my day, we put into mice to make them grow tumours so we could pour chemotherapy into them to see if it worked for the tumours. And we're putting this into humans for a disease that hasn't killed anybody for at least 2 years. It is beyond belief. And that's really what I cannot understand. Now, today, I got sent something from Australia, which I must say it's the closest I have to being holding my stomach and being sick. It was a race of Morrison, the Prime Minister, doing a deal with Moderna for messenger RNA vaccines for the next 10 years that you will buy 2 billion Australian dollars of these vaccines off the next 10 years, and they will target all sorts of diseases and they will be given to children. This is a gene therapy.
What did you get from Santa, Bruce? Don't ask. As I said before, Biden or his administration or whomever or whatever is pulling the levers of power in the United States of America during the supposedly lame duck days of the wind down to whatever must happen in the upcoming Trump era, sippy cup Joe Biden keeps passing out presents from an apparently bottomless sack of generosity. Always its reward for the unworthy and suffering for everyone else. Remember when Bob Geldof and his music biz pals asked, do they know it's Christmas? In that long-lost world, the they being sung about were the starving of Africa. By now, it might be more pertinent to consider many others instead, here, there and everywhere, who may have due cause to wonder what Christmas really is all about, at least to judge by what is actually happening in the world. Here in Britain, Keir Starmer's Labour government, rather than giving, has taken from our elderly, specifically the winter fuel allowance. I don't know if it's possible to gift wrap hypothermia, but if it is, I'm sure this government will have that dropping through pensioners' letterboxes any day now. As well as freezing grandparents and indemnity for Big Pharma, we look on too, or we do unless we're turning blind eyes to atrocity, at plausible genocide in Gaza in Palestine. Jesus was a Palestinian, and yet the places we connect with his birth and life and death are soaked in blood. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. That's what Jesus said, but apparently that's a gift to be taken back in January on account either that it doesn't fit or it's just not wanted. There aren't many Christians left in the so-called Holy Land, as it happens, certainly fewer all the time. Christians are leaving Syria too. Syria, whose present this Christmas from Biden's CIA is rulership by ISIS. Ho-Ho Joe's gift to Ukraine, and of course our British government has delightedly chipped in to pick up the tab, is yet more war. Our joint gift to Russia is long-range missiles, American and British-made long-range missiles, guided deep into Russian territory by American and British capability and know-how. All in all, it's a Christmas bonanza for the military-industrial complex, upon which the US economy depends, don't forget. For any of the boys and girls in Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and the rest of the arms manufacturers, any of them worried about the batteries running out of juice in the war in Ukraine, never fear. Rather than the angel Gabriel bringing good tidings, glory to God in the highest heaven and peace on earth to those with whom he is pleased, rather than any of that, the angel of death is at hand with the promise of more blood. And if there's no longer many gold coins behind the Ukraine door on the Advent calendar, fear not. As one door closes, another opens. And so now there's Syria, poor, previously mentioned Syria, ripe for harvesting. And of course, this Christmas roundup would hardly be complete without a look at Joe Biden's gift to himself and his family, being a presidential pardon, nominally for his wayward lad Hunter, but since it wipes clean any and all wrongdoing by him all the way back to 2014, when the USA made the gift of a coup to Ukraine, that pardon is de facto a gift for the whole of the Biden crime family. The message this Christmas seems clear. He's making a list, he's checking it twice. He's going to find out who's naughty or nice. It's past time to pick a side. But if you mean to be nice, don't be expecting too much from the big guy. The big guy, like the devil, looks out for his own.